Good Sunday afternoon, everyone. I want to take a few minutes and do a quick video. This one I want to entitle "In God We Trust," our national motto, and want to talk about that for a few minutes. You know, it's on our "In God We Trust" is our national motto, and it's on our money. On now in Tennessee, we have it up in our school buildings. That was passed, I believe that was in um, 2018, I believe. Yeah, 2018, it was passed by the Tennessee legislature that it would be displayed in our public schools for everyone. But it's pretty easy to say in God we trust, but is that really true? Um, you know, for it became our national motto in 1956, and but it was first put on our money in our 2 cent piece back in 1864. But do we really trust in God as it says as a nation? I mean, I'm sure um, many of us try our best to trust in God, but as a nation, do we? And would that have we fell away from that? And my answer is yes, absolutely yes. We have fell away from trusting in God as a nation, and many times in our history, we have proof that that actually happened. So I wanted to share a story with you about when our nation, one of many stories of when our nation put their trust in God. And many times it was because it was all they had to do. It was all left they had to do. It's all they could do with facing with overwhelming circumstances. And a lot of times in life, that's what we do. We're like, well, all I got left to do is pray. Well, and that's really what we should have been doing in the first place, is praying and trusting in God. And so nowadays, all this "In God We Trust" and stuff is all political. Just basically, uh, what they done here in the state of Tennessee is they made it a political issue and put it up in the schools. But do our elected so-called leaders really trust in God? If they did, when's the last time you ever heard of that you heard of one of our elected leaders asking to for a time of prayer and fast? I can't ever remember it in my lifetime. But I want to go back and share the story with you and read this to you. And I don't have a teleprompter, so I'll just have to read it from the book. And this is a really good book. It's called "And Then They Prayed," and it's got a lot of stories in it like this. So, in the fall of 1746, the governor of Massachusetts colonies received an alarming message. 96 French vessels were assembling off the coast of New England, preparing to attack Boston. With 40 well-armed warships and 56 troop transports, it was the largest naval armada to ever approach the American colonies. Their mission was to destroy the coastal cities from Massachusetts to Georgia, and aboard the warships, sailors were already preparing their cannons to lay siege to Boston. Aboard transport ships were 13,000 soldiers prepared to invade and burn what remained. The colonies had a few coastal defenses, and their militias were no match for the highly trained and experienced soldiers of the French army. But Governor William Shirley had a responsibility to protect the Massachusetts colonies and its citizens. As an impending invasion was only days away, Governor Shirley needed to take quick and decisive action. The colonists had only one reliable weapon at their disposal, capable of thwarting um, such massive invasion. Governor Shirley immediately called the people to prepare for battle. He issued an official proclamation calling for the citizens all across the colonies to assemble in their churches for a day of fasting and praying. Now, this is a governor in 1746 issuing a proclamation for prayer and fasting. Nowadays, if we did that, we'd have the ACLU and all these people hollering separation of church and state. But as we get through the story, you'll see why it's important. But this is one of the reasons why I want to share this about our national motto. On the morning of October 16th, hundreds of Bostonians made their way to the city's Old South Church, where they would assemble together to pray for God's divine intervention. The autumn morning brought a clear, calm sky, making for a peaceful, pleasant walk to the church building. And remember that, a calm, beautiful morning. Once the congregation assembled in the sanctuary, Reverend Thomas Prince ascended to the high pulpit and immediately began a strong and fervent prayer. Deliver us from our enemy. He prayed enthusiastically. Send thy tempest, Lord, upon the waters to the eastward. Reverend Prince's powerful voice echoed off the church walls as they prayed. Raise thy right hand, shatter the ships of our tormentors, and drive them hence. Filled with emotions, he lifted his head towards heaven and continued to call upon God, and not only protect the people from harm, but to destroy the French fleet. Suddenly, the sunlight began, which only moments earlier illuminated the sanctuary, disappeared. Outside, the clear skies gave way to the ominous clouds that enveloped the church into their dark shadows. At that moment, a tremendous wind slammed into the church and the windows and shook it violently as they strained to hold back the tempest. The pounding of heavy rains on the church roof reverberated inside the sanctuary. Undaunted by the raging storm outside, Reverend Prince continued his prayer. Sink their proud frigates beneath the powers of thy winds, he cried out. He paused momentarily just as the church bell rang twice with a strange and uneven tone, as there was no one in the bell tower, and the Reverend took that as a sign from God. Reverend Prince raised both hands towards the heavens, towards heaven, and with a voice of victory exclaimed, "We hear thy voice, O Lord, and we hear it. Thy breath is upon the water eastward, even into the deep. Thy bell tolls for the death of our enemies." Silently, he lowered his hands and bowed his head before the great congregation. For several moments, he stood motionless. Then, with tears streaming down his cheeks, he raised his head and, closing the prayer, he proclaimed, "Thine be the glory, Lord, amen and amen." Hearing of the Reverend Prince's prayer and the miraculous storm that ensued, Governor Shirley sent the sloop, the Rising Sun, northward to obtain the news of the French fleet. When she returned, the captain gave an astonishing report. Nearly the entire fleet had been lost in the storm. Distraught by what had befallen their mighty fleet, the French admiral and vice admiral both took their own lives. Of the 13,000 soldiers, only about 1,000 survived, and a majority were seriously ill and unfit for battle. The few ships still afloat were reported as being under sail, returning to France. As he had done so many times before, God had again delivered the America, from the hands of their enemies. When their liberty, safety, and security were threatened, the people of Boston had prepared their homes and their property for the invasion, and then they prayed. I love that story right there because it just shows if we trust in God and we uh, take time to remember who's controlling everything, if we submit ourselves to Him and pray and fast about things, it's amazing what God can do for us, and it shows throughout our history, and that's one great story. I love that story. Um, I think the story is called The Ballad of the French Fleet, and if you get a chance, sit down and read it. Of course, I just read it to you, but it's just one of the times throughout our history, our nation's history, that God has showed up and showed out for us. And I wanted to take time and share it with you all today, this Sunday afternoon, and remember that it's more than just a national motto. It's something that we have to do. We have to learn to put our trust in God, not in government, not in man. Whenever, like with this COVID deal, we've got government telling us what we can and can't do and everything, but I don't think I've ever heard of any leader in this country right now calling for a time of prayer and fast for God to help us with this what they call a pandemic or anything. So, um, there's things that we can do. They say, well, we got to trust the science. Who is science? God is science. He's the one that gives us the knowledge and the ability to do things. Trust the science. We need to trust God. That's what our national motto is. In God we trust. So I hope this has been a good message for you to hear today, and that you will, when you pull your money out or you hear that again, you read that on your money. In God we trust. We need to trust God a lot more than we've been doing. Give Him the credit for the glory of what He does for us. Good afternoon. Have a good day. Have a good rest of your week. I may stop in and do another video, but I wanted to share this story with you, and have a blessed day. Thank you.